Hi, this is Mrs. Meekum. Just doing a quick tutorial video for you on how to make a basic design that would be turned into a t-shirt using the Silhouette Studio software. So the first thing I want to let you know is that this is your work surface here. This is a design-based software, and so you have a lot of freedom in where you move things and place them. This is like the setup for what the cutting mat will look like, and when you put things through the Cameo, you have to have it on a cutting mat. So we have two different sizes of cutting mats, or actually three different kinds, but for a t-shirt design you'll most likely either be using the 12 by 24 mat or a 12 by 12 mat. And so right now it's set up for a 12 by 24, but I'm going to change it to a 12 by 12 mat, and you can see that right there. Also, you want to make sure that your page settings are set up correctly. So this is the design page settings right here on the top where my arrow is hovering. And then the other thing to know is some of the tools over here on the left hand side. Typically for a t-shirt design you're going to be mainly working with the text tools. That's what I'm going to focus on most today. And then I'm going to also show you how to use the rectangle tools to make a border. And then there's a few other tools that we'll work with. There's always the go back button right here, but your keyboard shortcut of Control Z works well as well. Then also these are zooming in and zooming out tools, and I'm sure we'll use those as well. And then sometimes it's easier to use this fill tool. So I'll show you how that works. So I'm going to do just a basic design. I'm actually designing this for my son and my grandsons, just kind of a t-shirt silly idea. So I'm going to make one that is Control C. So right now as I type, you'll see that there is a red outline around the letters, and then the letters are just blank. So this would be the red line is the cut line. That's the line that will be cut out by the machine. And whatever the color would be, whatever material you put into the Cameo would be your color. So sometimes when I'm working, it helps me just to visualize things. If I highlight my text, click on the fill button up here, and turn it whatever color it is I'm working on. Okay, so I'm probably either going to do black or blue vinyl for this, so maybe I'll go with blue. So I have that. Also, when I've highlighted here, you can see that that my text menu comes up on the left hand side. This is where I can choose different fonts. If I'm within this text box with this green outline on it and the little knob on the left hand side, I have to have the text highlighted in order to change it. So you can go through any font that I have loaded on my computer will work, and I might stick with Times New Roman because it looks a lot like my keyboard, but we'll look and just see. So you can go through here and decide, and you can also come here and change your text size. Okay, so I can make it really little. I can also click in the box and put in a custom size, and then I'll know how big I want it to be. And there's some things you need to know. You kind of need to figure out what size you want it to be when you print. Also with lettering, you want to look for little, if you have letters that are too little, like I think I had one up here, something really skinny is actually pretty hard, like this. That would be hard to get a nice vinyl cut because those are super thin, less than like a quarter of an inch. And so that is a really thin cut for the cutter to do and to have it really good. There are some tricks that I can show you that are a little more advanced if you're having issues with your text. So I think for simplicity's sake, I might stick with this this text right here. So this is Times New Roman. I've got it about 144. I don't know how large that is though. I mean, I can see on my cutting mat these squares are 1 inch. It's a 1-inch grid. And so I can kind of get an idea of how big my text is if I just like stick it up here on the grid and think about that. It's about 1.5 inches tall. But there's other ways to tell that. So if I click outside the box and then just click on it, you can see the bounding box around it. So the only hard thing about that is, look, there's a lot of space above my letter that's telling me that is sitting in this size that I don't think I'm going to want. I mean, that doesn't give me a real accurate size. So you can fix this, but only if you're completely done editing your letters. Because what we'll do to fix this is we'll turn them into objects instead of letters. And if you're going to do anything else with these, if you're not sure about the font, if you're not sure if you've spelled something right, then don't do this. Or one easy way to do this is to make a copy first. So a quick way to copy things is to push the Control button and the down arrow. And I can get a single copy right there. And then I can move this one out of the way, and I have a backup in case I mess up the one I'm working on. The other nice thing about this design is I can set things off to the side here, and so then you'll see when I zoom out with my minus button up here, I can have stuff over here as I'm designing, and I do that a lot, especially when I'm trying to come up with a font I want. If I'm really having a hard time finding a font, I will copy this several times, and that way once you click off of it and you turn it so it's not text, it's really hard to go back and figure out what font you used. So I always try to make a copy of the, once I find a font I kind of like, especially if you have a lot of fonts in your computer. This one's not too bad, but as we get going along and download more fonts and find specialty fonts, they'll all end up in here and you'll have a ton and it's hard to keep track of. So just trust me on that and make a copy of your text before you do much with it. I'm going to come up here to the top now and push this button up where my arrow is, and that is, yeah, I hovered for a second, that's the fit to window button, and that's a quick way to get your cutting mat to fit back to the window. So what I'm going to do here is click my box, and then I'm going to right click, and I'm going to ungroup my letters. Now you can see that each individual letter is its own box. Okay. Now if I can move each one around, and so I can really mess things up that way. Sometimes you want it, but for this one I don't. I want them all together. So I just did a quick Control Z to do that. I've ungrouped them. Now I'm going to highlight them and group them again back together. So the button right here, up here on the top left is Group Selected Shapes. I can group them there. I can also do that on a right click. And you'll see those options there. Now when I click on this, I have a much more accurate reading of my size. So this is going to be on a t-shirt for a man. This is going to be for my son, and so who has graduated from this school a few years ago. So I'm going to resize this. Once I have that and they're all grouped together, I can drag my cursor and make that as big as I want it to be. So it's still not very tall. You can even stretch your letters out a little bit, which I think I might do, because I want it to be a little bit bigger than that. The other thing I'm going to do with this is draw a box around it, and I want the one with rounded corners. So I'm going to choose this. Now when I do that, you notice all I get is the red line. All that is giving me right now is a cut line. So I need to select this box, and I'm going to choose, instead of the fill button, I'm going to come over here and choose the colored lines, and that is going to give me open the line color window. So I want to color my line, and I do that. Now this is super thin. I want this to look like more like a button. So I'm going to come in here and I'm opening the line style window, and I'm going to come and choose beveled, and I need to make my line thicker. Okay, so I want it to look more like a keyboard button. So let me see how that looks. So I think we're looking pretty good right there. And we can position that so it's behind my letters. Let's look and see. I think that looks fairly good. Now a couple tricks now, if I want this aligned just right, I can come, make sure I have my arrow selected, and I can drag and drop it, or drag it over the whole thing, and it'll select all the objects that you scroll over. So they're all selected. They're not grouped right now, but they're selected so that they're all highlighted, and I can make changes to all of them. I'm going to come up here to my top menu bar, and I'm going to open the Align window, and that's these bars right there. And I want to align all of these so that they are centered, and then I want to align the middles. And now I know I've got it centered in that square. So I'm going to right click now and I'm going to group them together. So I can group them here by right clicking, or I can go use this button up here. Whoops, I have to re-highlight them in the top left corner. So now they're grouped. So you know that by, I can come here and when I move them around, they both move. Now the big key to cutting these is that I need to rotate this if it's going to be for a t-shirt. So when we cut this out, you cut it from the back side of the vinyl, and when you flip it, you have to flip it over to put it on the t-shirt. If I don't do this, I'm going to end up with it backwards. So I'm going to right click and I'm going to flip, and I think it's horizontally right there. So now it's backwards, and that's what it needs to look like. The other thing you need to do is save it. So I'm going to do a save as to my hard drive, and I have t-shirt folder here that I'm going to save it in, and I'm going to just name it after my son Lynn and click OK. All right, so that's a basic thing that we need to do. Now when I get ready to cut the design, I'm going to go through the cut settings right now, and then I'll show you how you load your vinyl into the machine and actually cut it. So here's the cut settings. I look here and I can see that right now my cut line is right inside the middle of that box, and I don't want that. I want it to cut the edge, and inside and outside would be great because the inside material I want to go away. So I'm going to do that. I need to choose what material I'm going to use, and I'm going to be using heat transfer vinyl smooth, and that tells me what my blade will be on. And on the I'm doing this on a computer where the Cameo is not actually hooked up, and so in our Cameo we'll actually have a couple of different choices here because it has two blades. And so I think the speed and setting is fine. I typically do a double cut, but we'll see how it works. And always do a test cut before you cut, and before you cut, please have me double check that everything is the way it needs to be. Because there's a few tricks of the trade I use when we're cutting vinyl that I will help you with. And especially if we're going to do a project where we're making like 10 or 20 t-shirts, there's some advanced settings that we have in this to make that replicate and make it a lot easier to do. So I'm going to turn this video off for now, and then make another quick video showing you how we actually cut out the material.